Hello and welcome to the Business Channel in association with UK ABC, the UK ASEAN Business Council. In this programme, we'll look at the scale and the extent of the changes that are taking place in ASEAN and report on how Britain can contribute to its growth. The 10 countries of Southeast Asia are no longer just part of someone else's growth story. They're quickly moving up the value chain and becoming leading players in their own right, opening up the potential for billions of pounds of new business with the UK.
Now, when you look at the changes that are going on in the ASEAN markets, it really is quite remarkable. Each of the 10 markets are very different, but I think this is a very exciting part of the world, and we've got to make sure that British business shares in the growth that's going on in these markets. We're going through an extraordinary period in the world, aren't we? You know, the West has had all sorts of problems through over-leveraging, and yet we've seen dramatic continued growth in China and India. But I think sometimes we forget the scale of the opportunity in the ASEAN markets. You know, countries like Indonesia, which is the fourth largest country in the world, it has been affected by the global slowdown. But the reality of ASEAN, it has continued to grow in the 5 to 6% range.
There's no question that the ASEAN markets are an area of growth. We're seeing a rapid increase in the scale of their economies, particularly by comparison with Europe and North America. So that's a huge opportunity for trade. We're also seeing the ASEAN markets create their own internal market within Asia, with trade barriers between themselves coming down. So this is also a big opportunity for trading for UK companies.
The changes we've seen in ASEAN have been enormous over the last 5 years. If you look for a start at the infrastructural changes, regulatory changes, barriers coming down, previously integration within ASEAN was driven by countries like Japan and Korea, big firms in those countries, bringing together countries like Thailand and Malaysia. Now it's all changed. Large firms in those countries, such as CP in Thailand, these large conglomerates are bringing together trade and business within the region.
The region as a whole has about 500 million people, and it's composed of 10 countries which are diverse in a whole variety of different ways. But what we're hearing from our clients, and certainly from our own experience of working in the region, is that over the next few years, and particularly when the ASEAN Economic Community is introduced in 2015, that's going to change. And in fact, shortly afterwards, by about 2016, the IMF is predicting that the total GDP for the region will be something like 3.34 trillion US dollars. And if that is the case, it will make it the 6th biggest economy in the world. And obviously that's going to change things quite significantly due to the economic benefits and harmonisation arising from that. And we think that's going to open the doors for British companies, but also for companies from various other parts of the world.
Well, I think the ASEAN countries have looked around the world and they've looked at models that will attract foreign investment. And yes, whilst there are regulations and restrictions and ways of working, they have actually set up models that are attracting foreign investment. There's a great pool of labour to work with, a lot of which has not had the opportunity of formal education, but is very keen to learn and embrace new ways of operating. There's a lot of assistance from the government, from both the British government for investment into ASEAN countries and from within the ASEAN countries themselves to take on board manufacturing, new ways of working, and they're the people that are now investing in those countries for the future.
Free trade, innovation hubs, open skies. Legally, culturally and economically, ASEAN is changing quickly as old barriers start to tumble.
2015 is a milestone. Until this point, doing business between ASEAN countries has not always been easy. We've had tariffs that have been relatively high in places. There have been a lot of paperwork. If you've imported your products to one ASEAN country, it's not always been possible to then distribute them across the region. At the beginning of January 2015, everything is going to change. Those barriers are going to come down, tariffs will be reduced, the ease of doing business will improve immeasurably. We estimate that the cost of doing business within ASEAN could fall as much as 30% during this process. So the possibility, the liberation of wealth that this process is going to kick off is enormous. And that's why English firms, European firms, need to start focusing on ASEAN today.
So what we've noticed is that generally across the region, over the last few years, a number of countries have done a lot to significantly improve their IP law and the implementation of their IP law. And that in itself means that countries coming into the region can be that much more confident about the way that their business will be protected. Malaysia has introduced a number of technology hubs focusing on electronics and biotech, and also they have an innovation development program. And Singapore has also introduced an IP hub. So really collectively those things all have a sort of a common purpose, which is to stimulate innovation. And really, if you stimulate innovation, then that can actually underpin a number of these other aspirations that they have.
We've had an open skies policy in ASEAN, and what that's meant is that airlines within the region can fly to and from anywhere. So we've seen AirAsia, we've seen Lion Air, we've seen a huge explosion in the amount of new airlines taking Asians within Southeast Asia, very similar to what we've seen with Ryanair and EasyJet. And it's meant suddenly the possibility of travel has become a reality for Asians across Southeast Asia.
From the sophistication of Singapore to the raw potential of Burma, growth is happening throughout Southeast Asia. Instead of picking off one country at a time, you can now ask yourself where it makes most sense to make a base for your kind of business.
So when you look at ASEAN, you have to remember that half of ASEAN is Indonesia. One country represents 50% of the market, and that country is undergoing an incredible economic revolution right now. So we're seeing huge investments in infrastructure. We're seeing levels of growth, 6-7%, driven by consumption. And that's very important because what it means is these are not markets relying on demand from Europe and Asia, which of course has fallen back. These are markets being driven internally. But it's true elsewhere. Countries like the Philippines. As of last month, the Philippines was the highest growing market in Asia, higher even than China. Growth of over 8%. Finally, the Philippines has been able to liberate the enormous growth potential of its population. Now, if you look at Malaysia or Thailand, they've always been engines of growth for ASEAN for the last 20 years. Still doing very well. Growth rates we'd be delighted to see here in England, 3-4%. Brunei, successful, oil rich and oil led. Still sustaining growth rates of 3-4%. And finally, of course, the wild card, Myanmar, recently joined the sort of economic grouping in that it's liberating its market slowly. It's an energy-based economy, but huge potential. So what we see is it's a collection of markets. On one hand, you have Singapore. 1 in 4 people in Singapore, in theory, is a millionaire. You have Myanmar, where the average wage is under $10 a day. So it's a hugely diverse market, but one that has growth across the board.
There are a number of companies now, particularly larger companies, who are actually exploiting the diversity within the region. So, for example, Singapore is often seen now as being a very good place to establish a headquarters because they have very sophisticated legal systems which are very well respected and very well enforced. Also, the cultural diversity can be very beneficial there. And also the general approach to doing business is very solid, and there are very, very low levels of corruption, sort of less than most parts of the world, in fact. Then other parts of the region are very good for certain types of manufacturing. So Thailand and Indonesia, for example, they can be very good for sort of like general manufacturing, but then if you're moving more into high-tech manufacturing, the Philippines, for example, and Malaysia are very good places for that. So if it depends very much upon the nature of your business, but if you select very carefully which parts of the region you're moving into, you can actually exploit that diversity, and that can actually enable you to grow within the region by picking where you place certain kinds of your business.
Across Southeast Asia, the demand to modernise capabilities and upgrade performance is creating a series of exciting growth stories for British companies and their partners.
What we're seeing in the ASEAN countries is a rapid growth over the last 10 years. They're looking at sustainability, they're looking at energy efficiency and anything they can do to give themselves an edge to attract foreign investment, which when you look at Colt as a group and how we work, we very much think the same way. It's long term. We look at the markets that we can go into where we can make long-term investments in people, where we can put technology in front of the local authorities to help them develop their standards, much as we've done in Europe, and give these countries the opportunity to be at the very forefront of sustainability, energy efficiency and life safety systems.
Well, the ASEAN markets are changing hugely at the moment. I think for OCS, if I just put this in perspective, we're an international facilities management company employing around 77,000 people around the globe. Around 30,000 of those 77 are based in the ASEAN countries, and it's a huge centre of excellence for us. The ASEAN countries right now are fast growing. They may be not all at the same stage of growth, but actually together as an economic body, they're going to represent a huge market for the future. We've been operating there since 1988 with our first investments in Thailand, and that is our regional operating headquarters for the ASEAN region. We've now invested in other countries, including Malaysia, Singapore, up into Laos, Vietnam, and we see huge pockets of growth for us into the future. Essentially, our clients are looking to outsource services. They're looking to focus on their core activities, and OCS is able to supply the labour and the solutions to enable them to focus on their strategies. Future of the market, exciting and vibrant.
Certainly at the moment, over the next 2-3 years, the economies in the Asian region, provide an opportunity for UK companies to move into particularly the defence and security market, which is being driven by the need to modernise the defence and security forces and also to consider current and future threats in that market, such as cybersecurity.
They were once attractive only for their natural resources or as a source of low-cost manufacturing. However, ASEAN markets are now even more an exciting and challenging place to do business. Rapid population growth and sustained economic development has generated a need for power supply and maintenance. These opportunities have enabled us at Turbine Efficiency to engage more purposefully with our customers in the ASEAN markets. Working in partnership with them, we've developed and successfully provided technological solutions to extend the life of their existing light industrial gas turbines. We're also able to offer reliable, flexible and cost-effective power solutions where there is currently limited choice.
As ASEAN seeks to raise its game, Britain is valued as a partner for its ingenuity and creativity.
I think in many activities, countries like Britain are ahead of the curve. They've been through a lot of the learning that these countries are now embracing and trying to find solutions for. So they look towards UK, towards Britain for these solutions. And we're able to take innovation and solutions from here and work with the local management teams and translate it into a local solution. And I think it's very important to recognise that whatever we do in the UK might be right in the UK, but it does need translation to become a local solution in the local markets.
The most important thing to start with when you're talking about ASEAN is the lingua franca is English. Huge advantage for British firms over our French, German, other European partners. Everybody communicates in English. And at the same time, ASEAN companies are starting to understand they need to go higher up the chain. They need to have more skilled production, and those skills are heavily reliant on the ability to speak English.
This is a nation that has huge diversity across many industries. Whether it's the creative industries, financial services, automotive, life sciences, biotechnology, education, you name it, the list goes on. We're still one of the manufacturing powers of the world. And I think that creativity and innovation and the fact that we're trusted in the ASEAN markets suggest to me, and I'm convinced about it, that the opportunities are huge.
Well, I think that's where Britain comes in. The UK, unlike any other country in the European Union, has a high degree of high quality services. It provides a range of services, financial, IT, creatives, but also planning, architecture, civil engineering. And countries, as their economy becomes more mature, they require those things to add value to their own productive base.
Over the next 20 years, consumers in Southeast Asia will be raising their expectations and building a better life for themselves, creating potentially explosive demand for all kinds of goods and services, from education to fashion.
Without question, education is the centrepiece of opportunities for Britain. And of course, we're seeing this. British universities have been opening across the region, even public schools. We had Marlborough opening just across the Malaysian border from Singapore. The headmaster who taught our future Queen, Kate, is indeed the headmaster of that school. We see Dulwich College, Epsom College, all opening across ASEAN with a massive demand for Asians to send their children to a sort of British school. Now, in addition to that, we see increasing demands from consumers. Asians are very fashion conscious. They're very keen to have the most up-to-date apps, to see the latest movies. They are consumers who are well aware of fashion trends in Europe. And so a lot of the goods and services that we produce here in England, very popular.
To fulfill demand for faster travel and better lifestyles, a huge amount of money is being invested in Southeast Asia's infrastructure. Everywhere, architects and engineers are drawing up plans that depend upon high-quality input.
The opportunities are vast when you look at the amount of growth that's going on in the ASEAN region, when you look at the amount of infrastructure spend that's going in, when you look at airports, mass transit, commercial, everything down to retail with shopping malls. Everything's about increasing their opportunities to have a better lifestyle, and they want the latest technology, and that's where companies such as Colt can add value to these countries by being on the ground, by investing in the local people, and drive the standards to another level, which is very much what we've done in Europe over the last 60 years.
The rapid infrastructure growth will always challenge the lack of power for electrical power supply. Electricity is not something you can easily store, and it's not possible to grow a country's capability without robust and reliable power generation. Without reliable electrical supply, there's no air conditioning, there's no cranes, furnaces, airports, or for that matter, no Facebook or Twitter. In some countries, it's difficult to provide electrical power to communities and factories on a more local basis because of the need to modernise distribution. The ASEAN marketplace offers a massive opportunity to deliver small, localised power solutions, and we are establishing a strong working relationship with our local partners in country to enable us to do this.
In helping to develop standards, whether it's life safety systems in smoke control, whether it's solar shading, natural ventilation, and you see all of these technologies increasing the building efficiency. And most of this is being done with the help of Western architects, Western engineers, and they're buying in this technology, looking to increase their attractiveness to foreign investors.
As a market for innovation, Southeast Asia is developing quickly. Everywhere, end users are looking to adopt the latest solutions.
They need innovation, they need solutions, and they want to embrace them quickly and with enthusiasm. And I think the danger is if we just sort of take one solution in and don't keep modernising and refreshing, then it soon becomes out of date.
Clearly, Britain has been a leading defence exporter for many years. I think we're often within the top 5 internationally. And I think at the same time, you know, Britain has enjoyed a long heritage of trading with the Asian regions and has many bilateral agreements and relationships in place with those nations. And I think that proud heritage, allied with the fact that we have a very strong high technology background and we're very innovative, sets us up well for trading in that market.
They're constantly looking to not just look at the latest technologies, but also to take those technologies and make them better within their own country so that they can say, well, we've developed this, we've developed that. They're always looking to take an opportunity and make it even better, which is why if you look at those countries over the last 10 years, that's why they've increased their economies and their growth consistently. One of the great things about working in a market such as ASEAN is that the things that we're doing over there we can then take back to within our European markets, our South American markets or our North American markets, and that's proving to be a great advantage both to us but also to consultants and architects and end users who haven't necessarily seen the opportunities that are developing in such a fast-paced environment as ASEAN.
In most cases, business is becoming transparent enough and connections good enough for organisations to start thinking about running operations from one or two regional bases.
In terms of the difficulties of dealing with the Asian market, I see mainly as down to financial and logistical. Breaking into these markets, the costs of which can be high. Clearly these markets you require to build relationships to be successful, and that takes time on the ground to do so. There are obvious logistical and cultural challenges that need to be considered. But I think in the main, you know, once those can be overcome, it is easy to operate in those nations.
I think it is becoming easier to operate in the ASEAN countries. Firstly, the regulations of the past, which were quite restrictive, are being eased. They're recognising that to attract foreign investment, they have to make it an attractive marketplace. Secondly, I think for companies such as OCS, we listen to our clients and we tailor our solutions around the client desire, strategy and their general direction of travel. And again, by listening to our clients and working within the local culture, recognising the differences in traditions, language, religion, then if we embrace that all together, then you can come up with solutions that are very effective and are very relevant within Asia.
I think as the Asian markets continue to grow globally and continue to work in the global economic environment, then the processes are becoming more transparent, procurement is becoming more transparent, and therefore it's easier to operate. Clearly, there are still instances of protectionism and times when international governance is perhaps not as we would wish, but that is changing, and I think that the markets themselves, with the buoyant economies and the drive to work with international companies and international countries, allows us to operate much more freely than once was the case.
Well, I think business is becoming easier to conduct because of the increase in infrastructure spend these countries have been doing, the advanced telecommunications that are in place now, and the connectivity between the different countries. It's very easy to get across the region now, and that's making things much easier to operate from one or two bases to cover the entire region.
In building up a local business and bringing in the right skills, you're free to explore a number of options in Southeast Asia.
The most important thing is to understand your market, size your market, understand whether you're going to go there directly and trade directly with importers or whether you get a JV or a partner. I think it depends on the circumstances. But as in all, sort of business situations, what you have to do is reach out and get help. That's what the UK ABC is there for. That's what UK Trade and Investment is there for. And I believe the opportunities are huge, but you mustn't assume that all the markets are the same. They're all very different.
In some countries, maybe some of the more advanced economies, it helps to have a direct office on the ground where, for example, in Singapore, we've been there for some time, and we're well known to the local authorities when we're talking about building efficiency, when we're talking about life safety with smoke control systems. It helps to be on the ground there, but it's a very similar environment in terms of business to what we have in Europe. Whereas if you're talking about some of the economies that are starting to grow rapidly, then it's better to have local people on the ground, either as a business partner or maybe a distributor, where we can work with them, we can train them long term, give them the opportunity to understand how we work, and then we can also start to step by step build our businesses in those countries. It has to be step by step. It's very important.
I don't think necessarily there's a one-fit-all solution for addressing any of the Asian markets. Where we need to deal and contract directly, we will do so, but clearly we would often wish to work with local partners, whether that's through something like a joint venture, But ultimately, for us, it's about the development of sovereign and sustainable capabilities for these nations. And that's very much about the transfer of knowledge and capability into these countries. And very much that's about working with local companies and partners in these nations.
We've operated on both the model of direct delivery and also with a partner in country. Our view is that both methods can be equally successful. However, we always ensure that any local partnership operates primarily for the best interests of all concerned, as the best business always benefits everybody involved. Getting that balance right is key to success. It's crucial that we identify the right partner at the outset and to have a very clear view on both sides of what the working relationship will be in advance of delivering any business. We recognise the importance of face-to-face communication and our willingness to make every effort to ensure that team members meet with our customers on that basis with some regularity. Modern communications such as Skype and email have an important part to play, but real understanding comes from those vital meetings where everybody is in the same room.
There are many different models. We've used most of them in our time in ASEAN countries, and I wouldn't say there's one quick right or wrong. I think you need to analyse what you're trying to do. I think you need to look at what level of risk you're willing to take on board. But for OCS, we've used joint ventures extremely successfully. We've also got wholly owned subsidiaries, which again are successful, but there is a right time and a right place for each model. And I think what I found in my time in ASEAN, and I've been going out there since 1988 and working out there, is that actually the model you choose has to fit with your strategy, your end goals. And if you get that all mixed together right and you choose the right partners who are looking for commitment and real resource, not a sort of flash in the pan visit to a country and exit, then you can build a very successful model for the future. And I think it's by adopting a very local solution, recognising that you're going to be working with a local labour force that is keen to embrace the future, putting something back with them is welcomed, and that is what gives you a point of differentiation and enables you to work within that labour force. On occasions, labour can be quite difficult to find, such as in Thailand, where there is a shortage. And I think it is by investing in the communities, in putting something back to those communities, in treating staff well, educating them, training them, encouraging them, actually you can build a really good, loyal workforce, which I think is great for the future.
Within the region, there is a lot of cultural diversity, economic diversity and legal diversity. It can be very difficult for someone entering into the region to understand what these issues are. So it's absolutely vital to work with someone else, with a local expert, to help you understand what's going on and to establish some sort of base and operation within the region. Now, because of that diversity, what often is the best thing to do is to establish a bridgehead into the region, and that will depend very much upon the nature of what your business actually is. Generally speaking, you may want some sort of administrative centre, which could, for example, be in Singapore, but then also you'd be looking at where you might want to manufacture. Depending upon the nature of what it is that you're manufacturing, you may be looking at manufacturing in, for example, Thailand or Vietnam, with some kind of greenfield manufacturing in Malaysia alongside that. But then it's all very well to have a sort of like a growth strategy in place. It could be organic, but it could be something which is planned in advance. But to protect that, it's absolutely vital that you have your IP protection in place as well. The reason for that is that if you don't, you're at risk from competition. And also having a good IP protection program in place, it makes it much, much easier to secure investment should that be something that you need. And it also makes partnering with other organisations easier as well.
Over the next few years, more and more businesses will be asking themselves these kinds of questions. The BRICS might have been the biggest story in world growth, but ASEAN is close to taking on the role of the coming market that everyone most wants to discuss. Well, that's just about all we've got time for at the moment, but if you'd like to find out more about any of the organisations that we've featured, then visit our website, thebusinesschannel.tv. Bye-bye for now.